Hey, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Jannatul Adni. I'm the student of University of Mataram and my major is English education and I'm from class 2D. And today, and I'm here today to present my article review that has a title Depressive Symptom Level, Sleep Quality, and Internet Addiction Among Medical Students in Home Quarantine During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Okay, my presentation is divided into six main parts. The first is abstract, the second is introduction, the third is methods, the fourth is results, the fifth is discussion, and the last is conclusion. Okay, my presentation will take about 20 minutes and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of my presentation. Okay, let's start my presentation. Okay, the first is abstract. The COVID-19 pandemic has a major impact on the mental health of people around the world. Due to the possible impact of quarantine conditions on mental health, we decided to assess internet addiction, depressive symptom level, and sleep disorders among medical students during the quarantine of COVID-19. Okay, for further explanation about this case, I provide you in the next slide. Okay, now we move on to the introduction. In January 2020, the World Health Organization declared the outbreak of the 2019 coronavirus disease, or as we know as COVID-19, a public health emergency, which its prevalence was growing fast. As a response to this global health crisis, strict public health measures have been implemented to prevent the spread of this virus, including avoidance of public contact and quarantine. As we know, in this modern era, technology such as the internet has become an essential part of everyday life, and it has affected to people's lifestyle. People's dependence on the internet has made it a major behavioral problem. And then, depression has numerous adverse effects on students' lives, including poor quality of life, poor academic performance, early school leaving, and even increased suicide rates. In addition, depression can trigger sleep disorders. Sleep disorders are conditions with irregular sleep accompanied by daytime sleepiness, disturbances in daily activities, and symptoms of insomnia. And based on this article, this is the first study that planned with the purpose of assessing the prevalence of psychological factors among medical students and to investigating the sociodemographic correlates of these psychological issues. Okay, now we move to the next slide. That is methods. This article used four methods. The first is study design and participants. In this method, ethical principles related to the confidentiality of participants' information were considered, and the participation was free and voluntary. Although participants' informed consent was obtained, all medical students in Iran aged 18 and more were eligible regardless of pre-existing medical or mental health conditions, although cases with using antidepressant or anxiolytic drugs were not excluded. And then the second method is sampling method. The sample size in this method was determined by using the Cochrane formula, taking into account the probability of first type or alpha error at the 0.05 level or 95% confidence. The acceptable level of test power equal to 0.95, and then the effect size of 0.1, and the prevalence of independent variables is 18 until 20, and the sample size was estimated to be at least 440. Therefore, the sample size was put for the main purpose of this study. Okay, the next method is questionnaires. There are three kinds of questionnaires that use in this method. The first is Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. The Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index was used to measure sleep quality. This questionnaire was developed to assess the quality of sleep during the last month, which includes 18 items measuring 7 scales. Those are subjective sleep quality, sleep latency, sleep duration, sleep efficiency, sleep disturbance, use of sleep medications, and daily time dysfunction. Okay, the second is Internet Addiction Test. The Internet Addiction Test is aimed at assessing Internet addiction and has 20 items ranked on a 5-option Likert method. And the Persian version of this questionnaire was reviewed by Salehi et al. And then the last is Patient Health Questionnaire, PHQ. The Patient Health Questionnaire evaluates of severity of depressive symptom level in individuals based on Diagnosis and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 4th edition. Okay, the last methods is statistical methods. The statistical package for the social sciences software was used to perform all statistical analysis. Categorical variables were expressed using frequency and quantitative data were expressed as mean more or less standard deviation. The prevalence of dependent factors was examined and then stratified by sociodemographic data. An univariate binary logistic regression analysis was performed. Then variables found to be significant were included in subsequent binary multiple logistic regression analysis. Okay, now we move to the next slide, that is result. As we can see in this slide, the proportion of students with poor sleep quality was higher in females, smokers, those who didn't fast, and those who use social media for more than 4 hours a day. The mean score of depression symptom level was 7.7, with 28.6% suffering from it. Factors such as smoking, not fasting, a GPA lower than 16, and using social media for over 4 hours were significantly associated with a higher risk of depression symptom level, and a GPA of 16 or higher was associated with a lower risk of internet addiction. Female participants were less likely to have poor sleep quality. Fasting was significantly associated with higher risk of poor sleep quality, and smoking increased the risk of poor sleep quality. And a positive correlation was observed between PSKI and PHK, internet addiction and DSL, and IAT and PHK. Can see? And as we can conclude that fasting has very influential effects to decrease the depression symptom level. Okay, now we move to the next slide, that is discussion. Prolonged self-isolation from society and educational environments can lead to negative psychological effects, particularly for healthcare students. The rate of depressive symptoms level increased to 33% with 25% diagnosed. Almost half of medical students having poor sleep quality and internet addiction at 25%. Male gender is predisposing factor to poor sleep quality, and internet addiction rates were also found to be higher than the average in Asian countries. Fasting was found to be a protective factor for poor sleep quality and living away from family. Fasting was found to be a protective factor for poor sleep quality, and living away from family before quarantine had a 1.75 times higher chance of developing depressive symptom level. Depressive symptom level showed a direct relationship with internet addiction and poor sleep quality. Okay, in this slide we can see that internet addiction and poor sleep quality has very influential effects to develop the depression symptom level. Okay, we move to the next slide. The study found no significant relationship between grade point average and sleep quality or depressive symptom level, suggesting that educational level and subtype may have a confounding effect. The study didn't find a significant relationship between grade point average and sleep quality, but Nakostin Ansari et al. Acknowledged that a higher grade point average was associated with a lower change of depression symptom level and anxiety disorders. And next, alcohol consumption and smoking are predisposing factors for developing sleep disorders, particularly among young adults and particularly medical students. The study found a 3.5 times higher ratio for smoking and depressive symptom level compared to Chalik et al.'s 12.2 times ratio. Fasting, which improves sleep quality by reinforcing circadian rhythms and restricting food intake, was found to be protective. The study also found a direct relationship between depressive symptom level and internet addiction, with poor sleep quality increasing the change of depressive symptom level by 3.2 times. Disrupted sleep cycles, which are common in hospital and medical centers, can decrease serotonin and melatonin secretion. Okay, now we move to the last slide, that is conclusion. Okay, what I'm trying to say is the mental health of medical students should be a priority for academic policymakers and society, especially during the pandemic to deal with any further disaster. The study revealed that mental disorders, internet addiction, and sleep disorders increase with stimulation of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, a strong correlation between depressive symptom level, internet addiction, and poor sleep quality was concluded, and variables of gender, GPA, and smoking status were the most important associated variables. Okay, okay, everyone, that's all from me. Thank you so much for your nice attention. And the last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and thank you so much.